Well, here we are together again for another episode of the Professor O Show. This is where we get together online to talk about business issues you really care about. I am your host, and in this video module, we're going to talk about the different forms of business and also different types of businesses. And I want to take a step back here and clarify some of the terminology that I'm using here, and that is forms of business ownership are things like the legal designation of the business for legal purposes and for taxation purposes. Types of businesses are the things that the business actually does in its operations. So let's go ahead and explore some of these key points here as we move forward here. And that is, once you have an idea of what type of business you want to run, you need to identify the appropriate entity for taxation purposes and also for legal purposes. So let's take the type of business you want to do. Could either be a merchandising type of business, e-commerce business, where you are buying product or at wholesale or at a discount or from your suppliers, and then you mark it up and resell it online. You could be in an upcycling type of business where, say, you buy things like clothes or items, refurbished electronics, and improve them in some way, and then resell them at a higher price. Then there's other types of businesses where, say, you are in a lead generation business where you gather customers' information. Let's say they need a plumber to come out to their house. They go to your website and they put in their zip code and what they need done. Say they need a new toilet put on or something like this, then your business would be responsible for providing that customer with leads. That's a lead generation business. And the third type would be an advertising or publishing type of business, and that is would be a site like your blog or your YouTube channel, or you generate revenue for your business by businesses paying you to advertise on your web page. So those are the three main types of online businesses at any rate. There's e-commerce, like the Amazon.com. There's a lead gen, like an Angie's List or referral service. And then there's publishing, and a site like that would be like LA Times and what have you. And then for those of you that are interested in more of a brick or mortar type of business, I've had students in the past that have run home daycare businesses, students that have done spot dye and carpet cleaning, where the student went out to people's homes and would dye the stains that were in the carpet rather than a shampooing type treatment, would actually dye that stain out. Dog walking businesses. I've had a number of students that have had all sorts of businesses, and they all require a different sort of business structure or business form that I'm going to get into now. So those were the types of businesses. Now let's talk about the forms of business. So the simplest and most easiest to explain form of business would be that's called a sole proprietor. Sole meaning one, proprietor meaning owner. Sole proprietor, where basically you and your business are intertwined. You would file your taxes under your own social security number, and your business has unlimited liability, and so do you have unlimited liability. So, for example, if you have a sole proprietor business and you damage a customer's property, that customer can certainly take you to court to try and recover damages, and your own personal assets could be subject to the settlement in that type of lawsuit. This is not a business law class, so we don't get into it in any further detail, nor is this a taxation class, where we do not get into all the tax implications of a sole proprietorship either, but you will file your taxes for your business along with your personal. The next form is a partnership, where you and one or other people are jointly responsible for the affairs of the business, and also you share liability. So what that means is if you're in a partnership with someone, that is a true partnership, not a limited liability partnership, which we'll talk about in another video. If you're in a true partnership with another person, you and that partner are jointly liable. So let me give you some context for that. So let's say that you handle all the operations of the business. You're the one out that's the front of the business, that you're out dyeing carpet or walking dogs or whatnot, and your partner handles the back office, things like the marketing and the accounting, the bookkeeping, the banking, whatever the case may be. So if your partner does something, we'll say maybe inappropriate with regards to the business finances, takes out and borrows a lot of money on the business accounts, and whatever the case may be, you are also liable for that in a partnership. So it's very important to pick your partner carefully, because you are both jointly liable for the assets and liabilities of the business, and then you would file your taxes as such as a partnership. The third is a corporation. Corporation is a little bit different than the other two. The corporation you can think of as somewhat like it's an entity of itself. It would have its own tax ID number, which you could get from the IRS. I'll put a link in the course shell for the IRS, where you can go and get a tax ID number, or a employer ID number, as it's often called, an EIN. So then the corporation has its own articles of incorporation and its own rules for who will own what percentages of the business, and it notes that through the issuance of something called stock. I'll make another video at some point explaining how stock works, and more about that at a future time. And then the next form of business entity has characteristics of a corporation, but it's slightly different. It's called an LLC, or limited liability company. It does have some features in that it has its own tax ID number, it files its own taxes, and it does provide a certain limit to liability, meaning that if, let's say, you're in the dog walking business or whatnot, and you're walking someone's dog, and that dog bites someone else, or whatever the case may be, that the business in itself absorbs some of that liability. In other words, that in a matter of business, if your business is sued and goes to a court of law and there's a judgment against the business, the liability ends there. So you could only lose that which you have invested in the business, and that your own personal assets are not placed on the line in such matters. Now, again, this is not a business law class. For more information about that, I'll provide some links to explore these topics in greater detail. But just to recap, you have three essential different forms, or four different forms of business ownership. That is a sole proprietorship, a partnership, a corporation, and an LLC, or limited liability company. And then you have many different types of businesses, such as e-commerce businesses, and publishing businesses, and lead gen businesses, and so on and so forth. So there you go, and there you have it. These are the different forms of businesses and different types of businesses. I'll see you all online.